Yes, wonderful. We want to welcome Cambridge School of Weston presenting to our families and community this morning. We are very, very excited to have Melissa and Patrick in some special surprise guests a little bit later. And so with further ado, we will allow you to do your presentation, and we greatly appreciate the information that's about to be shared.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. We're always really excited to meet Carroll families and Carroll students. We have a bunch of Carroll students at CSW, and they're fantastic members of our community. So I'm happy to have the chance to share a little bit about our school with you today. So the Cambridge School of Weston is right on the Weston-Waltham border. Here are some overview facts about CSW. So our overall student population is about 310 students. 70% of them are day students and 30% of them are boarding students who live on campus with us. And that allows us to have a great diversity of students on campus. So we have about 11 different countries and 12 different states outside of Massachusetts. We have about 29% of our students on campus are domestic students of color. And we have about 13% international students. We have a great financial aid program at CSW. About 30% of our students are on financial aid, and we have about 250 courses for students to choose from, which is awesome. It's kind of like a small liberal arts college, and we kind of operate a little bit like a small liberal arts college. One of the most important numbers that I'd love to draw your attention to is the number of students that a teacher is working with in any given mod. You'll notice that's a different fact than many schools share about their student-teacher ratio, which at CSW is 6:1, and many independent schools are right around there as well. But asking what the student-teacher ratio is doesn't really give you as much detail as asking how many students a teacher is working with at any given time. And if you think about public school teachers who are teaching maybe 6 class periods a day with upwards of 20 students in each. And so they're working with over 120 students at a time in any given marking period. And then even at independent schools where teachers are teaching more like 4 classes with an average class size of 14 or so, they're working with about 60 students at a time. And at CSW, we cut that number in half because of the mod system, which I'll dive into in a moment. So that's really huge in terms of the relationships that can be built, in terms of the kinds of assignments that teachers can give, and also the kinds of feedback that teachers can give. So I think that number is really important, and one that I would encourage folks to keep in mind. Those were big picture facts. These are the things that we feel like differentiate CSW from other independent schools. And I'll dive a little more deeply into each of these: the mod system, our social justice graduation requirement and overall emphasis, our PACE program, and student voice at CSW. But the big picture thing that you want to sort of take away from this presentation about CSW is our progressive approach. We are a progressive school. And what that means at CSW, really and truly, is that we are relevant and responsive to the students in front of us and to the world around us. So every decision we make at CSW about our curriculum, our programming, is really focused on students and their experience being at the center of it, right? And at the same time, we want the program and experience that the students are having here to be really relevant and responsive to the world they inhabit as well. So first, the mod system. This is probably the thing that is most different about CSW than other places. It's really just about the way we schedule time at CSW, and it's really intentional and thoughtful. And it's not new. We've been doing the mod system at CSW since 1973. It's based on research and expertise about how adolescents learn best. And so although it might sound very new and unfamiliar, it is really well researched. So the mod system basically is that we have 6 marking periods that we call modules. There are 6 weeks in each of them. There are 3 academic classes in each day, and those classes are each 90 minutes long. So it might help to start with something most people are pretty familiar with, the traditional school schedule. where there are 4 marking periods a year and something like 6 academic class periods in a day. We take that and just flip it on its side with the mod system. So with this, you can sort of see it's the same amount of time, it's just scheduled differently. So we have 6 marking periods per year and 4 class periods a day. I mentioned earlier that there are 3 academic classes a day, and that 4th one we call D block is a built-in afternoon activities and athletics period. So this is our daily schedule at CSW. It is meant to have a really humane and thoughtful pace to the day. And, I said earlier that everything about the mod system is based on research and experience about how adolescents learn best. And that's true in terms of students taking 3 classes at a time. That's a more developmentally appropriate expectation for teenagers than juggling the homework and studying for 6 classes or subjects at a time. But also the start time, 8:30 a.m. is the start time recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics. I mean, really, a lot of thought has gone into our schedule in the mod system. And so you'll see that the daily schedule starts with your first class for an hour and a half. During an hour and a half long class, teachers can teach across different modalities and do a lot of different kinds of activities so that it's a really immersive, experiential, and engaging class period. I'm a dorm parent at CSW, and I've been here for about 15 years. And so I've heard and seen a lot of students come in worrying a little bit about whether those 90-minute classes will drag on or feel boring, or if they'll be a little antsy to be done with them. And really the answer is no. The students say it flies by, actually. So you start with your first class for an hour and a half, and then you have, depending on the day, either half an hour for advisory or an hour for assembly. You'll have your second class for an hour and a half, and then you'll have an hour for lunch, because nobody really needs an hour to eat lunch. That's when we do our club, committee, leadership, affinity group meetings. So students might eat for the first 20 minutes or so, and then go to a meeting for something, or just spend time with friends. It's a really intentional time that everybody has the same class or lunch period at CSW so that they're all available at the same time. And it can really be not only a time to decompress, but also a time to connect with the community. After lunch, you'll have your third academic class of the day for an hour and a half. And then there's faculty office hours. And that's a time when all faculty are available and in their offices, so that if a student needs a little extra help or has a question about something, they can drop in and meet with their teacher or their advisor as well. So you'll notice that in between each of the academic classes, there's some downtime or some non-learning time, so that students can really consolidate what they've just learned in this very immersive class and have some time to switch gears. So it's unlike a schedule that gives you 4 minutes to, run and switch books and get to your next class. This was really intentionally designed to have a more humane pace to the day. After the faculty office hours, our students have D block. I mentioned D block is a built-in period for afternoon athletics and activities. And there are a lot of things that happen during D block. So our sports teams and athletic offerings happen then, but also performance-based options like a music ensemble or theater or dance also happen during that time, as well as some activities like Model UN and robotics and things like that. This is a glimpse at our schedule for the whole year. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because you don't need to understand the super details of this, but I did want to explain some of the benefits of the mod system. And this is sort of a good thing to look at while we do that. So first I'll point out that you'll see that French goes for 3 mods in a row, and so does geometry. So I know many people, when they hear about the mod system, lots of things sound great about it, but they worry, well, how can you teach French or geometry in 6 weeks? And indeed you can't. There are classes that build on itself in a cumulative way. And those classes are taught for more than one mod in a row, or sometimes for more than one block in a row. So the blocks are the class periods going down the screen. The mods are going across from 1 to 6. And one of the best benefits about the mod system is the flexibility it offers, not just to students, but also to teachers. So a teacher who's teaching any given class can look at the content of the curriculum they want to deliver and say, Is it best to deliver this in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 18 weeks, in an hour and a half a day, in 3 hours a day? Our chemistry class does meet for 3 hours a day with an hour-long break in the middle, of course. But so that way they can do some really awesome labs that they might not be able to do in an hour and a half long class, right? So that's one of the biggest benefits of the mod system, is that the curriculum can be taught the way it's meant to be taught. Another benefit of the mod system is just how many courses we can offer because of the way the time is scheduled. So I mentioned we offer about 250 classes a year. Some of those classes, especially the large foundation classes that students are required to take in grades 9 and 10, are multi-mod classes like you see with language and math. And some of those classes are one mod classes, where for 6 weeks you dive into analyzing one book like Moby Dick and just, tearing it apart down to the real details and symbolism and everything that you can find in there. So there's a lot that can happen with that. Another benefit of the mod system is that you can take time away from campus and it doesn't mess up your sort of graduation requirements or your schedule. So for example, we have a trip to Panama where students do Spanish and science in Panama for a mod. They can take a whole mod away in mod 5 off campus. They're doing science and Spanish and service and some history down there. So they're getting all of their sort of class blocks in, they're meeting all of their requirements, but they're off campus. They can spend a whole mod or 6 weeks off campus engaged in field work. So that's really exciting that they can do that because of the way the mod system is scheduled. You'll notice on the bottom that it says Wednesdays are for PACE, promoting awareness and community engagement. I'll talk a little bit more about PACE in just a few moments. But important to know that every Wednesday is a PACE day at CSW. And so it's a different schedule. Instead of the normal schedule of classes, students have one class in the morning, and that rotates which class it is, whether it's their A block class, their B block class. And then there's community time, which can be class meetings, assembly, advisory time, activities for community building, and then lunch. And then after lunch is PACE. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about what that is, but I think it's important to know that it's a really intentionally different pace to the day on Wednesdays. And it's really nice to break that up a little bit. Okay, so these are just some pictures of students very engaged and immersed in work. That first picture is from our marine bio trip, which goes out in mod 6 every year, and they spend a couple of weeks doing original research on an island off the coast of Maine, doing marine biology stuff there, which is also really fantastic. Also want to mention that at CSW, we frame challenge a little differently than at some schools. Our courses are all challenging. They're all taught on what would be an honors or AP level. We choose not to offer AP classes at CSW. We're actually part of a group called the Independent Curriculum Group. That is a group of schools that all agrees not to teach to a test. We really don't want to put a ceiling on the curriculum at CSW, and we want to be able to make sure that it is really relevant and responsive to what's going on in the world. And that's sort of the antithesis of teaching to a test. So our classes are very challenging and engaging. Students are doing high level work and really honing those critical thinking and analyzing and collaborating skills, but it's not within the format of an AP class. So a little bit about the supports we offer at CSW for students in terms of academic supports. To start with, the structure of the mod system is a huge support and help right off the bat for many students, because they are juggling the expectations and homework and studying for 3 classes instead of juggling 6 or 7 classes as they might at another school. So that's huge. We also have a fantastic skills center at CSW. The Skills Center classes are offered during A, B, and C blocks. There's also an evening skills option, which is mostly taken advantage of by our boarding students, but every once in a while there will be a day student who wants to take advantage of that option. And Skills Center's classes start with 15 to 20 minutes of learning an executive function skill, an academic skill, an organizer, something like that. And then the rest of the time, the students are working either on a specific plan for a skill that they need to work on, or their work for the other two classes they're taking that mod. So the skills class is taking the place of one of their 3 academic classes during the mod that they take it. So for example, if a student knew that a class with really intensive reading and writing requirements was going to be, difficult, challenging for them and really time consuming, they might choose to schedule their 3rd class in the Skill Center instead of adding a 3rd academic class on top of that. So that would do 2 things. It would reduce their course load from 3 to 2, but also give them the support during that time to work on their work for their other 2 classes with the Skill Center teachers. Those Skill Center classes are capped at 9 students. The thing about the Skill Center is that because it is taking the place of one of your 3 academic classes, you can only take a class in the Skill Center for up to 3 out of the 6 mods, because obviously there are other classes that you need to and want to fit into your schedule. So it works really well for students for whom they need a little directed support in specific areas. It does not work as well for students who need daily support throughout the entire year. And so to that end, we feel like we can accommodate really well students with mild to moderate learning challenges. Students with significant learning challenges that would require daily support throughout the year is something that's a little bit harder to support. The Skills Center is also open during faculty office hours. So from 2:30 to 3, 4 days a week, you can drop in. Whereas if you're signing up for a class in the Skills Center for the block, it's not a drop-in. You're scheduled for that time every day for that block. Other supports, of course, I mentioned the teachers are super accessible with office hours, but also available. You can meet them during lunch. You can set up other times to meet with them. And then we have evening Zoom drop-in supports for math and writing. There are also D-block labs for science and foreign languages. And we have a student-led, they're trained students with a faculty advisor, but a student-led writing hub as well. So those are some of the supports that are offered at CSW. I'd like to talk a little bit about social justice at CSW. It's a really strongly held value of ours that students engage with the world with a sense of awareness and cultural competency and personal responsibility. And so we are, as far as I know, actually still the only, but definitely the first high school in the country to have a social justice graduation requirement. And that requirement is that students take a minimum of 10 classes before they graduate that meet the social justice tag. In order to meet that tag, the class needs to do one of these things, at least one of these things. So look at historical and contemporary issues from the perspectives of non-Western cultures or historically oppressed groups, to understand and explore the structures of power and privilege, and to look at models of social change. So the class needs to do at least one of those things to be awarded the social justice tag, and students must take at least 10 classes before they graduate that meet that tag. In addition, social justice is just really, it's a pervasive part of the fabric of our school. So when we made this requirement, it was really honestly a formality. It would be hard for any CSW student to graduate without having taken 10 classes, even if they didn't really try. We have about 80 classes across all departments in our curriculum that satisfy this requirement, including many required classes. We also address issues of social justice in our PACE program, which I'll talk a little bit more in a moment. And also we have some events throughout the year. So we have a social justice day, and on that day, a group of students with faculty help plan an awesome exploration of a particular theme. So it might be invisible disabilities or immigration or the prison pipeline. And they really dive into it, and they get a keynote speaker, and there are workshops and expressive arts around it. We also have a diversity day where folks from within our community share aspects of their culture, and we do workshops around that. And there's also Culture Fest. There's many sort of events, but I wanted to also be clear that this is really something that's sort of really tightly woven into the fabric of CSW. So here are just a sample of some of the classes that meet the social justice tag. You'll just notice that they're in all of the departments. And like I said, it would be really hard to not meet this requirement as you move through your time at CSW. Okay, so a little about the PACE program. The PACE program started about 2 years ago, and it's a co-curricular program at CSW where we dedicate time for experiential classes, events, activities that are really preparing our students to engage with the world around them, the world outside of CSW, an increasingly complex world, a diverse world. It's a 4-year co-curriculum, and it's really designed to ensure that all CSW students develop key skills like self-awareness, social consciousness, healthy living habits, leadership skills, different things like that. And it's, as a program, there are 2 parts of it. The PA in PACE stands for promoting awareness, and the CE in PACE stands for community engagement. And the promoting awareness is really sort of a human behavior curriculum that's tailored to where a student is in any given year. So for grade 9, they're doing the PA part for the first half of the year, and the CE community engagement or service learning part for the second half of the year. The PA part, they're looking at an overview of CSW culture, sort of transitioning to a new community and culture to help them integrate. They look at important foundational thinking related to physical, mental health, good, healthy relationships, things like that. Whereas the CE component, the community engagement component for 9th grade, is helping the students sort of really look at and implement skills for meaningful community engagement. As they move to grade 10, it's a mind-body connection focus. So the promoting awareness part is really looking at self-care, mindfulness, meditation, healthy decision-making, stress management, things like that. And the service learning or community engagement part is looking at students working in groups to identify a problem within CSW or a local community, and then working in groups to see if they can try to address that problem. As they move into grade 11, their thinking is a little bit more sophisticated and nuanced. And so the program sort of follows that. The PA part of the program is called Alliance Building Across Cultural Differences, and it works on really understanding multiple perspectives and cultural competency, really looking to build their knowledge of individual and shared identities. The CE part for 11th grade is helping students to partner with nonprofit organizations and to initiate new projects or build off of relationships that they have, to make some meaningful contributions sort of from within a community, now that they have that more sort of sophisticated skill set. In grade 12, they're working on a senior capstone all year, and that can be something new that they're diving into. It can build off of their work that they've done in 11th grade. It can be something that they're really, really interested in and want to take to a new level, but they work on it throughout the year and present to the community at the end of the year. So what you're seeing on your screen now is a little bit of the questions that are driving our PACE program and some of the goals that we're looking to get out of it. Student life. So these are the interscholastic, so competitive sports teams that we have at CSW. And actually our cross country team is in a champion race today, which is very exciting. We also have awesome recreational athletics and a wilderness program. The athletic requirement at CSW is that every student earns 3 athletic credits a year. If you're on a team sport, that handles all of those athletic credits all at once. And if you prefer to do recreational athletics, each mod of recreational athletics is 1 athletic credit, and each wilderness trip, which are trips that are offered on our mod breaks, is 1 athletic credit. So you can sort of mix and match however you like. I'll say I love the athletic program at CSW because we're not a school that requires that you fulfill it with team sports. So that means that everybody who's on the team sports really wants to be on the team sports, which means there's a great sense of camaraderie on those sports. And the other thing I love about it is that everybody gets to play, and they get to play at the level that's appropriate for them. So what I mean by that is that as a new student to CSW, if you want to try a new sport that you've never tried before, you can play JV and you will get playing time. Everybody does. There are no cuts from JV teams. And if you come into CSW and you've been playing soccer for 8 years and you're really skilled and you want to be really competitive, you can try out for the varsity team. And it's not unusual at CSW for a new 9th grade student to play varsity and to be warmly welcomed by the older students on the team. And it's not unusual for a student who's a senior at CSW who maybe wants to try volleyball for the first time to try and play JV volleyball just to be part of that team experience. So I love that it's really accessible for students at different levels. We also have a ton of leadership positions at CSW. And this is part of building student voice at CSW. We have students sort of practicing their leadership skills at every level from the very beginning of their time at CSW. And it happens in ways both small and large. Within their classes, there are going to be opportunities for them to really shape an assignment. Within their classes, they'll also be engaging in great discussions and have the opportunity to be leaders in those class discussions. But outside of classes, they can participate in or start a club. There are leadership positions for each of the grades. So these are all judicial board, advisory board, curriculum committee. You'll hear a little bit more about that in a bit. Diversity committee. These are all have both overall leaders and grade representatives. So even as a new 9th grade student, you can come in and run for a leadership position in one of these. And these leadership positions go all the way up to having 2 students who are full voting members on our board of trustees. So we really take this seriously. The idea that students should have voice and agency, not only over their academic schedules and having choice in the classes that they take, but also in the way that the community at CSW is shaped. So that's a really important thread at CSW. We also have a bunch of affinity and alliance groups for many different aspects of your identity. So the idea is that there's both an affinity group space where you can have a shared experience with other people who share your experiences, and also opportunities to have windows into other experiences that are unlike your own. And then just a quick note that we are a boarding school at CSW, and so we have an awesome boarding program. And that has a lot of benefits for day students as well. I know you're all local, so you may not be considering boarding at CSW. I mean, I still think it's great. I'm a little biased. I've been a dorm parent here for 15 years. But even as a day student, it's really nice to be at a school that doesn't shut down at 2:30 or 4 o'clock. Things are still a little bit limited now due to COVID, but they are getting more back to normal and hopefully will continue to do so. But in normal times, you can come early for breakfast and have breakfast with your advisor. If you're doing the theater production, you can stay late for dinner. We offer a fantastic weekend activities program where there are probably maybe like 4 or so different activities happening every weekend that both day and boarding students can sign up for, and that are all included in tuition. So it doesn't matter if your friends are boarding students or day students, anybody can sign up for them together. It doesn't matter if your friends have extra spending money or not. And it's a fantastic way to continue sort of the social connections on the weekend, which is pretty awesome because I know a lot of independent schools, because they draw from so many different communities and everybody sort of scatters back to those communities at the end of the day and the end of the week, it can be a little harder to keep those social connections going. And I think it's really fun that students at CSW have things to bring them back to campus and back together on the weekends. So let me see, I saw there were some notes in the chat. Let me just take a look. Okay, so there's a question about how taking skills classes impacts a student's transcript and how do colleges respond to having fewer academic classes on a transcript. So the skills classes show up on a transcript. They get grades just like any other class. And it's a support class that's well utilized. I don't think colleges have a negative opinion of them because of the way the mod system is scheduled. There is opportunity for those class blocks to be fit in, right? So it's not reducing the students' amount of required classes or foundation classes. It's really reducing the amount of a student's electives. And so colleges think it's great that students are getting the support they need to do well in their classes. It's a really good skill to have. Okay, so I want to let you know that we will open up for all kinds of questions in just a few minutes. But first, we have Patrick Foley here. And Patrick, I wonder if you could spend just a few minutes talking about the 90-minute classes and maybe just a minute introduction to our Food Justice and Power course, which is a course that all new ninth graders take.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'll try to be really quick because Leah's here, and Leah took my class, so she'll be a much better representing, the student experience than mine. Again, quickly, my name is Patrick. I've been teaching history here at the Cambridge School for 10 years, and my daughter Anne is a new second grader in BR2 at the Carroll School. And I'm in that magic moment of a Carroll dad where it's 4:45 and my daughter does not want to get in the car because she wants to stay on campus. And she's home reading for the first time, and it's a wonderful experience. Over these 10 years, I've taught maybe 100 Carroll students. I'm not quite 100% sure, but a lot. I just had Leah last couple of weeks for her first class here. All ninth graders come in and take a class called Food, Justice, and Power. We center it on the concept of food is universal, yet we have individual experiences in cultural connections to food, religiously, spiritually, culturally. So all students can relate to this. And then we kind of go to the next layer and look at the justice aspects of it. Who has access to food? Who controls food? How is food power? Historically and contemporary. It gives all ninth graders kind of a foundation of how classes are and kind of how we used discussion as one of our key concepts of teaching here, how group work is really important, frustrating for some, liberating for others, but yet we do that. How the groups come together to present something that they're teaching, opposed to listening to Patrick for 90 minutes. And it's an orientation class, but actually doing the work at the same time. A typical class might look like me starting off with some kind of image to kind of ground the class wherever they came from. I might be introducing the topic of the day and checking in how the homework went. Often then the students will break off into smaller groups, and each person in that group and each group has a task that will need to come back to the whole for it all to fit together. We all know if we listen to a teacher for 90 minutes, we remember maybe 4 or 5% of what they said in that 90 minutes. But if a student teaches something, they remember between like 80 and 90% of what they are asked to teach, because it puts them in such a position that they need to understand it in order to be able to. So in the history department, we do a lot of that. I know if you hear me more than you hear the students, I'm doing something wrong. I can talk a lot about how the school is a good fit for many students. It's certainly not a good fit for all students. I'm profoundly dyslexic. My daughter is, and I've taught in 3 different schools: extremely traditional Catholic school in Boston, a charter school in Boston, and now here for 10 years at a progressive school. I could talk about this forever, and it's my life. So hopefully there'll be a couple of questions, but I would also love to hear from the students, Melissa.
And Gaius and Leah, maybe I can ask you to just start by introducing yourself and some of the things that you're involved with at CSW. And then I'll ask a few questions to get things started, and then we'll open it up to any questions anybody else has. Gaius, do you want to go first, introducing yourself?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Gaius. I'm a Carroll alum and a freshman at CSW. Some of the things I'm currently involved with are cross country, and that's been fun because we have, as you heard, our championship game today. So I'm excited for that. We actually might win. We have a decent chance, so I'm kind of excited. Let's see some of the other things. Like some of the other classes I'm taking this mod are geometry, Spanish, and ear training. And some of the classes I took in the previous mod were food justice power, but not with Patrick, biochemistry, and also Spanish. So yeah, that's what I'm involved in right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Gaius. Leah, how about you?
Hello, my name is Leah Silva. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Carroll alum and a freshman at CSW. I'm currently taking biochem, geometry, and Spanish too. I do soccer as my D block. I am a grade rep for curriculum committee, which is like changing parts of the curriculum or editing it to better fit the students. I am a part of IDEA committee, which stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Action, right? Yeah. And I'm part of the Latinx Club and the Mixed Heritage Club when it doesn't conflict with curriculum committee.
That's a lot you're juggling. And Leah, you're pretty quiet for us, so maybe you can just try to project a little more when you talk. Thank you.
Sounds good.
I thought maybe you could each share a little bit about how the transition was to CSW for you. Anything that really helped with the transition, anything that was challenging for you?
Yeah, so one thing that really helped when I was transitioning to CSW was having like your advisory meeting type of thing where you meet with your advisor and then the other students in your advisory, because it's a good way to get to know people and also like figure out who you can go to for help. That definitely helped. It's also just, lunch, being able to talk with people. It's a lot of social elements CSW has helps make you feel more comfortable at the school when you're starting new.
Definitely. I agree with everything Gaius said, but I did soccer preseason and I thought it was really helpful to kind of go into CSW's community with a group of people I had already spent a lot of time with. And that kind of got me introduced to upperclassmen and people in my freshman class. And there were lots of orientation things, so I got to meet people. But I'd also say because you only take 3 classes per mod, that you get to know the people in your class really well. And so that kind of gets you adjusted and get to meet a lot of new people.
Awesome. Would one of you talk a little bit about community groups and how they work at CSW?
I can talk about community groups.
Go ahead, Leah.
Community groups are awesome. I love my community groups. It's basically there are 2 upperclassmen that kind of lead community groups, and then you're with a bunch of new students, and they meet every Friday for like 30 minutes, I think. And sometimes it will be updates or answering questions that new students have, or just like fun games or conversations to get to know people better.
Awesome. Thank you. Could you each maybe just talk about like either your favorite class so far or even your favorite assignment so far? Guys, do you want to start this time?
Sure. So I think so far my favorite class was food justice power. I really enjoyed it. It had a bunch of fun, big questions, and also just got me to look at something food, like food in a really more, I guess, advanced and philosophical way than I would have normally. And I really appreciated and enjoyed that. I think one of my favorite assignments was a presentation I did in that class about the food object I was assigned to was a banana, and I had a lot of fun making like a slideshow and talking about all the different things about a banana, including like the history of and just like how it grew, the industry around it. And there's a lot of really both sad but very interesting stuff that's kind of important. And I really enjoyed that presentation.
Leah, what about you?
I'll start off with my favorite assignment. It's kind of weird because it was a test, but I really liked it. It was in Spanish, and it was kind of like a partner test, but you had to write questions out in the past tense, and then you would ask your partner the question and they'd respond, and you had to write it in the third person. And I thought it really like very nicely. It connected the grammar, but also talking. So it was like, and getting to know people better. So I thought that assignment really focused on lots of different parts of language, which I thought was really good. And I love all my classes, so it's pretty hard to choose. But I also really loved Food Justice and Power. I thought it was, I learned so much about the system of food and kind of how food is connected to so many parts of life, and like the power that food holds, which I thought was really cool.
Awesome. Could you talk, either of you or both of you, a little bit about if you've accessed any kind of academic support while you've been here so far and how that's gone for you?
Can I start? So yeah, some of the so your teachers are very supportive people and they're always there for you. So you should never be afraid to just maybe during class ask a question or a clarification. But you also have office hours, which is a period that goes from 2:30 to 3, where you can just like go to your teacher's office and talk to them about something that you need, like a clarifying question, or I don't know, anything like that really. And generally, at least in my experience, I've always, if I send a teacher an email, they respond very quickly, often like within, I don't know, like a 10-minute period. So pretty quick response time with emails, which is awesome.
What about you, Leah?
My math teacher is really good at creating lots of spaces for help. So for math, I can visit her from 8 to 9 before classes start. I can visit her 2:30 to 3 at the end of the day. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's a math Zoom for an hour. So at least for math, there are like tons of places you can get help. Also including like after class and email, like Gaia said. And then for Spanish, there's also like office hours that I utilize a lot. I haven't used the skills center yet, but knowing that it's there is really helpful.
Awesome, thank you. So I think now it would be a good time to just open up to any questions that anybody might have. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Feel free, you can put it in the chat if you prefer, but you're also welcome to just unmute and speak up, whatever is helpful. Charlene, do you have a question?
I do. Well, first I want to say hello to Gaius and Leah. This is so wonderful to see you. And I know all the Carroll families that reached out, knowing that Cambridge School of Weston would be presenting today, are going to see this recording following. So thank you. And I will say thank you, Melissa, because you answered many of the questions that were sent to me, or you asked the questions that were sent to me by families in advance. But what I'm curious about from both of you is, how was your transition from a block schedule to the mod schedule for both of you? How did you feel about that? And you can answer, whatever order you see best.
Go ahead, Gaius. You unmuted first.
Hey, awesome. So I originally, when I heard about the mod schedule, I thought it was cool, but I didn't know if it was going to be overwhelming. But I can definitely say it's really not that, like, I guess, jarring of a change, because it allows you to get deeper into your classes. And because of that, you're able to kind of appreciate the extra time you have more. And having 3 classes per mod, that doesn't include like the deep blocks, isn't that much of a, like, I don't know, drawing change from the original block format Carroll has. So I definitely think it's actually a really good, I really like the mod system because it just gives you time to enjoy your classes more.
Great. And Leah, how did you feel about that transition from a block schedule to the mod?
Yeah, first I'd like to say hello. It's great to see you.
Hello.
And I honestly kind of forget what the block system was like because I'm so into the mod system now. But I really like it. I agree with what Guy has said, where like it's a lot more manageable, I feel like, when we have 3 classes of homework. And that Wednesday, which gives you kind of like a pause, you can kind of, it gives you time to kind of a break to rethink your homework, which is really nice. And I love it. It gives a lot more time for classes and questions and time for assignments.
Thank you very much. I see we have a parent with a question and I have a few more afterwards.
Great. Megan, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, yes. Thank you so much. It's a really great presentation. My question is for Patrick, because my son is a huge lover of history. It's his favorite thing. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how, history, I usually think of it as a very reading and writing intensive subject. How do you approach that? Or do you just have like words of wisdom for someone who's dyslexic and has gained a lot from the education at Carroll, but still finds writing not, it might be harder for that person than another person, but has this, huge love of history. I'm just curious what you would have to say.
Great question. Thank you. So I'm going to start at the hard part and then kind of go to the exciting part. In our 10th grade year, there's actually a history research paper requirement. I'm talking Chicago style. It's a 6-week class. It's like a 7 or 8 page paper. It's on redlining and the effects of it. And it's research, it's primary sources. It's like the college paper kind of getting ready for it. 100% of my Carroll students have done better than my non-Carroll students because they come and they'll tell you what they come with their forms of where the thesis goes and where's the supporting arguments go and where's the evidence go and where's the transition sentence goes. And it's almost their first week or two of what I teach, they already have. And which allows them to get more into the subject matter and the excitement of what they're researching than the actual scaffolding of writing that. That is done. And it's an important part, I think, of this education because in a lot of classes, they're not going to get that. And I'm going to give you an example of a class I'm teaching right now. I teach a class called Rocking the Schoolhouse, the history of United States education. And we look at from the founding fathers to Every Student Succeeds Act, or the better name, No Child Left Behind, because that really worked out. Their examination, if you will, I've never given a test or a quiz in 10 years, but I give really strong assessments. And their assessment is to target a population of K to 12, identify an issue that they want to revolutionize, not reform, and build their own school. And in 6 weeks, they have to be prepared by the end of this class to have an open house. And they're going to have the Patrick School of whatever, right? And it's going to be centered on sailboats and gardening or whatever they come up with, right? But they're going to look at a specific population, who's being left behind, and how they can revolutionize that. And their final exam is presenting in a very creative way to fake parents, other students, what their school can do for 10 kids. That's the kind of things we do in history. My modern Middle East class that I'm also teaching, some students are actually learning certain drum beats of the Middle East. Some students are learning languages that they want to bring and teach in class. Some students are learning Middle East pottery, pre-electric hand spinning, I don't know, like why, whatever. And these are the kind of authentic exams, I think, that really puts the student in 6 weeks in touch with a deep history part, opposed to this overall narrative of dates and names. If you go to a museum and you try to see every room, you leave knowing nothing. But if you spend the entire time in just the Impressionists or the Egyptian room or the postmodernists, you really take that away and think about that. And that's how we definitely approach it in the history department. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Charlene, do you want to?
I think I'd like to take one of your classes if that would be okay.
Yeah, no, you're totally welcome. Yeah, absolutely.
So another question for Gaius and Leah around the academic support. And I understand neither of you are at this time enrolled, if you will, in the learning program, but do you have a future view of potentially a mod where you might be accessing the learning support? I'm just curious if you know what your schedule is like going forward, so you know, or perhaps you won't need to because the support is already there in your other opportunities.
So I'm trying to think. So like one thing I want to say is that you know what you're going to have throughout the year on your MyCSW site. It just tells you what all your classes are going to be, and that's helpful. So you can kind of think about, you know, who should I go to for that mod. For instance, I forget which mod I have, but I think I have two. In one mod, I'm going to have two writing classes, or two, at least literature classes. And for that would probably be a time where I want to like start scheduling or using those extra resources to like meet with someone who's, I don't know, good at writing or reading. That's kind of a weird way to put it, but just to like give me the extra support I need if I get overwhelmed during that period. I don't think I will, because there's always like a lot of supports within every class, but that would be like an extra support if I needed it.
Wonderful. Leah, do you have any future thoughts on perhaps utilizing the structured support within your schedule or not?
I'm not currently enrolled in skills this year, but background noise. What was I gonna say? Oh, but I agree with what you said before, that for me, the support that I need is kind of already enrolled in the schedule. But I think in years to come, classes might scheduled like Gaius has, where I have like 2 writing things, a really heavy reading class, which I might need skills. So having that there is always helpful.
Perfect. And in the just being considerate of the time, could either of you give advice, a piece of advice to a Carroll student that's now like in where you were last year? And what advice would you give now as you're in 9th grade, you're having a wonderful experience at Cambridge School of Weston? And what advice would you give to an 8th or 9th grade Carroll student now?
Definitely, just for like, I don't know, application stuff, don't sweat it too much, because you don't want to end up working so much on your applications that you start screwing up at school, because that's bad. So put schoolwork first and then application stuff second. But also try to take all the resources you get from Carroll and bring them to your other school. Like I'm still using the homework planner because it's just helpful. It's nice, it's easy. And I really appreciate having it. So yeah, I don't know, just don't panic too much about high school. It's gonna be fine.
What about you, Leah?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Gaius says. I think my main message to Carroll students who are either looking or applying to CSW or just applying to high schools in general is that you got it. I mean, it's kind of a scary process, but it will be okay, and you got it. It's fun, and whatever school you end up at will be great. So you got it.
Thank you.
I loved both of those pieces of advice. Thank you. So I think I don't see any other hands up, Charlene. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, that would be great. And want to say we have a couple of their teachers from last year who have popped in and out to see them and are very proud of everything they've accomplished while at Carroll and at Cambridge School of Weston. And I want to thank you personally from the Secondary School Advising Office at Carroll and everyone here and the parents again who will be viewing this. And I know there will be many, as I've had many requests. And you two, thank you very much. And Melissa and Patrick, really wonderful information. Very, parents are going to be very appreciative of this presentation. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We love our connection with Carroll and getting to talk to everyone and share our school with you. And thank you to Patrick and Gaius and Leah.
Yes.
Perspectives and
Fabulous.
voices, I think, are really, really helpful. Awesome. Well, Patrick and I both dropped our email addresses in the chat. So feel free to reach out if you have any other questions, or if people watching the recording later have questions, they're welcome to reach out.
And I will pass that along to the families as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.